Guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. I did miss last week's review. I am very sorry. I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and I took a little while to heal up, so I just decided that was a week that I would skip, and now I'm back. And let's jump in. I had a lot of books this week as well. We had like 14 books, and number 14 for me, and also I should mention before we get to number 14, is that at the end of the video, we do talk about the viewer's pick of the week. So in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week so you have a chance to be featured on the episode. Now jumping into number 14, which is the original X-Men issue 1, a book I was actually looking forward to. I liked the original X-Men stuff from like 5 years ago where they got to see their own story. And if you like these characters a lot, like if your fan favorite is, this team, I think you'll enjoy it. But as someone who's a casual reader of these characters and not really following what's going on in the X-Men right now besides the flagship title, it just didn't really grab me. There's a lot of exposition in it. I think it also depends on how much of a Greg Land fan you are. And I like his art when the story is very just action-packed and driven in that way. And I feel like there's moments here that is very action-packed, but again, especially the beginning has a lot of exposition, a lot of explaining, and then it leads into this new series that has to do with Wolverine and Elseworlds and multiverses, which we've seen so many times from Marvel right now, and I don't think this issue in particular got me excited to see more multiverses and alternate universes. So overall, it just kind of was lukewarm for me. Not a bad issue, just not personally for me. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, a book that tends to be a little lower on this list, and that is Titans Beast World Central City, issue 1. I've been, for some reason, just collecting all these. I think, every single time I'm not going to pick it up, I'm like, you know what, I kind of want to see where Beast World is at with the Flash family. And every single time, they're just lukewarm. They're just okay. There's nothing that completely stands out. This one in particular had a main story that threaded throughout, but was broken apart by smaller stories, which I don't think really worked here. I liked some moments. I liked seeing Barry team up with Irie. That was fun. We got to see Animal Girl as well, a character we don't get to see very often. And in that circumstance, there's some small moments I enjoyed, but nothing here be like, whoa, you need to pick up this tie-in. I just think the tie-ins haven't done a great job at that thus far, because it has this anthology style as well that doesn't always completely work. Because, how many pages do you have to tell a complete story? So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is Animal Pound, issue 1. I think this book is really, really good, but this is really not for me. I don't tend to like animal stories that often. I didn't even get to read Stray Dogs. That's saying something, which I probably should read Stray Dogs. But I like the political aspect of it, this idea that cats and dogs are working together to get out of this pound, and it's not a cartoony way either. It's a very, it's a very highbrow way of telling this story, and there wasn't a particular character that I gravitated towards, even though I think this is a really well-made book. I think you could see the beauty of a book with knowing it's not for you, and that's kind of where Animal Pound is at. And also felt very much like a one-shot more than, we're building towards like a bigger story. I'm like, well, what is the bigger story of this? I don't know if that felt introduced here. So I'm gonna give that 2.5 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is Shift, issue 1. This is part of the Radiant Black universe. A character I've never really been able to get into, but I was like, let me try out the one-shot, A, because I'm reading Radiant Black, and B, maybe this will get me into the character, and it doesn't. I think this is definitely for fans who are already invested in this character and want to learn more about them. I like the idea of the chapters. I thought was interesting, especially because it's such a big book and you needed to use different artists. I think that flowed pretty well. There's some portions I enjoyed, like the musician our main character was talking to, I thought was the strongest aspect of this book, but nothing here was like, wow, I need to see more Shift. And I just didn't really feel gravitated towards it. But the art was really, really good, and I do think is a special one-shot to give more information and to build this world out further, which is why I give it 3 stars, because I do think it's an important issue. I just don't know if I enjoyed the character. All right, moving on to number 11. That was number 11. So moving on to number 10, which is Uncanny Spider-Man issue 5, a book that's just pure fun, especially if you're a Nightcrawler fan. If you love Nightcrawler, I think this is going to skyrocket to your number 1. As a Spider-Man fan, I'm having fun seeing Vulture and some of the other characters you may notice, even Spider-Man himself. And it's a cool way to expand Nightcrawler's bigger story about who he is as a mutant and as a person, him being a good person or a hero. I think with the XMen and Krakoa, they've gotten so stuck in the politics and stuck in the XMen or the mutants being great that they kind of forget the humanity of that story. And Nightcrawler is definitely the human element of that. I really enjoyed that aspect here as, again, a Spider-Man fan and just an X-Men fan. And the artwork was always solid. It was just a fun book. Did it blow my mind? I don't know, but sometimes not every book needs to. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, a book I normally don't get, but I would read every once in a while, like not as a review, but like just if I was looking for something to read. And as Life is Strange, Forget Me Not. Following this series on and off, it's not something I was like always on my pull list, but I always had a good time from the queer narrative and just sci-fi aspect as well. It feels a bit grounded. Same thing. It's a grounded story about where these characters are at from the video game. You introduce them again if you aren't familiar with them, and then this girl's comes in and she has powers, and obviously our main character has powers too, because that's like the whole point of the video game. So I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think there was enough there where I'm like, you know what, I'm interested to see where issue 2 goes. The art was fun. Again, it was great to see a queer story, a queer romance that I think Life is Strange always does very well with. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. That is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is The Incredible Hulk issue 7, a book I love. I will say this does feel a little bit more like a filler arc, but even for a filler arc, there's a lot of great horrific scenes here. Just getting to see the characters interact with each other a little bit. We got Charlie and Hulk especially getting some good time to create that bond, but then also Ghost Rider's character and some of his supporting characters as well. There's some good action here, some really great dark horror, I would say, but does it reinvent this series? Does it progress the story that much? No, but I'm having a fun time like playing this like kind of B-side of the book. Sometimes you do need a little break, a little breather from the bigger story to appreciate the moments of the bigger story. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7. Amazing Spider-Man, issue 40, an arc I've been really liking is Gang War. With this, I don't love John Romita Jr.'s artwork. It's definitely still not my style, but this book moves pretty well. We get to see Tombstone and Spider-Man and his gang. They team up, all as definitely pawn pieces are moving in different areas as we lead up to finding Fisk and Mary. But she is kind of the big bad here. And one thing that's really cool about this arc in general is the woman of the underground / just Spider-Man in general. But I don't know if you'd call them Spider-Man characters. They're more Daredevil characters. But it's cool to see like Man Mask, an Iron Man character, and then Mary here be kind of the bigger roles of this war. So I'm enjoying that. Again, this is more of a point A, point B issue. It's not as mind-blowing as those other ones, but I do think it moves the story pretty well, even if I am not a huge fan of the art. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is J. Garrick, The Flash, issue 3. This is just a really fun book. I will say I think the flashback and the present was maybe broken up, not as cleanly as it usually is. The flashback lasted a little longer than I expected. I just love the relationships being built here. Stargirl's relationship with our main character, Jenny, I think her name is. And obviously Jay just kind of adjusting to what it is to be a father, all while the main plot is kind of building of this thing that happened in the past and how that's going to affect Jay and his family. It's a really solid book. If you like Flash, and especially if you like Jeremy Adams, he knows Flash really well, and it just feels like a classic and something very familiar to read, all while obviously building a new mythos with Jay's family. So giving that 3.5 stars. Artwork is also pretty solid for this too, very familiar to old school Flash. All right, moving on to number 5, which is Batman Santa Claus Silent Night issue 3, a really under the radar book in my opinion. This issue does split up the art, which I don't love. The first artist I don't think was as strong as the main artist for this book, but it's just the DC universe interacting with Santa Claus, having to fight this villain. I mean, there's not much else to it, but the character moments are a lot of fun. It's cool to see this like in canon story of Santa Claus being involved in the DC universe. Superman and Santa Claus in particular have a really fun relationship. And if you're just looking for a popcorn flick type comic book to to kind of have as a palate cleanser to maybe some of the Animal Pound type comics that came out this week. This is a really fun book to have in your pull list. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that's number 5. Moving on to number 4, the actual title of this video, the main topic, which is Nightwing issue 109. This is a book I've been kind of torn on dropping because I feel like the beginning was, obviously out of this world. Love the book. And it's really interesting to see the same creative team be on a book for as long as it is. And, sometimes Bruno works on other books, but a lot of times when they do get a replacement artist, like this issue in particular, the style is really similar. So it never feels too jarring. It feels like a very similar run. But then there's times where you're like, okay, what is the plot of this book? What's like the main idea? And they definitely jump a lot. What I respect about this book and what kind of made me like this series again is this arc where it tells us a story from Dick's past, a story that not a lot of people liked, which was Rick, and tells it from a different angle and tells his guilt about him leaving his ex-girlfriend and how he left, and seeing that his ex-girlfriend kind of has her own story as well and kind of building her mythos. And I like this arc a lot because of that, and it's kind of getting me back into Nightwing and curious of where it's going to go. So my answer is, I think if you like this arc, continue to read it, because I really feel like this gave me a little bit more hope. And if you're looking to jump back on Nightwing, I think this is a good arc to do it. But I don't know if the book is blowing me away as much as it did in the beginning of this series. And I do want it to get back to that point and maybe tell us exactly where this series is planning on going and feel more like plots building on each other. I do think is a little missing from here. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. And, actually I gave that 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 3, which is Superman issue 9. There's a lot of DC books that came out this week. I love this book. And this issue in particular, I think really hits you in the gut, where you get to open with Lois reading these fan letters to Superman, where she doesn't even know if he's going to die or not. And it's nice to have the secret identity again, because Lois has to kind of tiptoe around. The book moves really well. Jimmy's now the head of the Daily Planet for a little while. We get some more movement with the Superman Corps stuff. I keep saying it, but I love how this feels like a television show. It feels like you keep checking up on not just Superman as a character, but all these little supporting characters. And again, kind of what I was stating with Nightwing, where Nightwing, I feel like, doesn't have a main plot that is kind of going to. It kind of works from arc to arc. This book is the opposite of that. I feel like there's so many little threads that's building to a bigger narrative, which is storytelling I tend to like a little bit more, and I think fits for serialized comics a bit more. And the art is so good. And actually, Bruno Rodolfo, who has worked on Nightwing, was doing the art for this one. So, and fits the style of Jamal, who's been on the book for a while. So, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, a book I love, and I hope it's not too long of a break, because this is the end of the first arc, and that is Kill Your Darlings, issue 4. We learn a lot in this issue of what's going on. It takes a little while to kind of get to that moment, which is why it's number 2, because I was really torn between my number 1 and number 2. But the ending, we find out that the mom was maybe not as kind as it was painted to be in that first issue, and maybe she died for a reason, and we still don't really know what happened, but it's definitely alluded to that she did actually kill her. What I really love about this issue is the selling of that she's not a reliable narrator. You don't actually know what's going on in this book, because she wants to deny and she wants to pretend that none of that happened, and it makes sense with the pretend world she's making. But then it makes you question, like, oh, what's her friendship like with this boy? Is the boy exactly who he says he is? And I'm guessing he still is, but now he's going through a lot of trauma by being controlled by the villain of this book, and there's just a lot of layers being introduced here that will have ramifications in the upcoming issues, while Bob Q's artwork is just some of the best art on stands right now. The worlds he builds and the colors just pop so well. The action, it just everything's married so well here. And I love this book. It's such a good book that I literally can't wait to see where this next issue goes. So if you're not picking up Kill Your Darlings, do yourself a favor and pick up this book. Giving that 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, and that's Wonder Woman issue 4. I've just been so pleasantly surprised how much I've been liking this book. I'm not a huge Wonder Woman fan. I wasn't really sure what Tom King's voice was going to be on here, but I think his political background really fits for this book. It tells an angle of Wonder Woman I'm just not as used to seeing, and I love the contrast of America kind of selling this idea that Wonder Woman's evil, all while Wonder Woman is trying to make the best day for this cancer patient. And there's a really interesting conversation about this boy not really feeling like other boys, and you could probably take that as like a trans analogy or a queer analogy of some sort. Love that without it spelling out either. It's it's an allegory for sure, but it was an obvious allegory, and I very much enjoyed that story. And there's just a lot of nuance in this issue, again, because of the parallels of what's going on in the American side and Wonder Woman herself, and it's just a really brilliant book that understands Wonder Woman and is peeling back her layers to tell a very different story, while you have some amazing artwork and a human element with this cancer patient story. So giving that 4.5 stars, that is my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite comics of the week were, and I would have a viewer's pick of the week, but I did not have a show last week, so next week I'll have the viewer's pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one.